Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, as always, Alex, and with me I have Logan. How are you, Logan?
Evening, Alex. Yeah, I'm doing really well. It's been another good week for City, and I guess it really now is that the squeaky bum time. We get excited and have a lot of cause for celebration, but I guess the job is not done just yet, but it's a very positive feeling around the camp at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a few weeks ago with yourself where we were talking about maybe it was 11 games to go, 10 games to go, and we're saying it's going to come around quickly. And all of a sudden, I think it's just the 5 games left for us to play in the season with a bit of a gap starting to open up on third place, which is a bit exciting and we'll get to in a second, I guess. But we'll start with that Plymouth game. And I think I did look it up to see if it was confirmed. I'm pretty sure it was the case that we heard before the match that the players had flown down for the game. It was going to be like a 9 or 10 hour coach trip or something like that. And club spared no expense in getting the players down on, flight for only an hour or two. And I think you were sort of concerned before the game about what sort of impact that might have on the players. But I guess all doubts are sort of cast aside with a performance like that in a pretty terrific away performance.
Yeah, indeed. And that was exactly what it was, a terrific away performance. And yeah, I guess my concern stemmed as, a few of the lads were talking about with just sometimes when you come into these really crucial end of season games, if you change too much, sometimes it makes the occasion seem even bigger than what it is, if that makes sense. And so my concern was just having the flight to Plymouth, even though obviously the logistical breeze and it paid dividends, just sometimes it can change the way the players think about, the game and approach it, because perhaps the nerves, come out. And I do wonder if COVID has something to do with that, not really having to factor in crowds. I think that away trips just, don't seem to feel like they have the same confronting element to them. And that might be unfair, but I think, our City's away record, we are the team that's enjoyed the most away days this season. And so, we seem to really relish the chance of playing teams away, but also not really having the crowd to deal with. So, look, I was happy to be proven wrong, and that seemed to be a masterstroke from management to fly, City to Plymouth. And it was a great performance.
Yeah, and look, it's a courtesy of Rick on Twitter. There's a couple of great stats, and you mentioned there the fact that away games aren't quite as daunting as they otherwise would be. But I believe it's now 6 games that we've won away from home by 3 goals or more, which is the all-time record. I think prior to this season, the record was 3 times back in 1914-15. So to not only be better, we've essentially doubled that with a couple of games to go as well. And also the fact that we've now kept 20 league clean sheets for the season, which I think is the joint third most in the club's history. I think we're now equal with the 2015-16 season, and the record's 22 clean sheets for the season. So we sort of talked. I think it was with you last week. We sort of talked about, obviously, first goal primarily is to secure automatic promotion. Then you've got the title as well to focus on, but there's all these other records as well that should keep the players focused and driven for the rest of the season, regardless of what's happening with the sides around us. We just need to keep this level of performance going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think building off with the stats that Rick said and the records, I think the other one that I saw was City are now tied in the country for the most victories of 3-0 wins. And I think we're in great company with, I think, only Manchester City. So I think we both with 8 wins at 3-0 or more, which is an incredible achievement when you consider, what it is to go away. As you said, a lot of those victories have come away from home. To go and put 3 goals on an opposition and keep them scoreless. So it's a really exciting time. And at the end of the day, we're so used to watching City be this colossus at home and really relishing playing at the KCON. But what we've seen this year this season, I should say, has just been fantastic. And we've got every element of excitement going into this final few fixtures, knowing that the ones away from home aren't incredibly daunting, because we do have the right to be confident when we travel.
Yeah, and I think friend of the podcast Mike in our chat was sort of saying these comparisons of City to other divisions isn't really reasonable because we're just in League One, and this idea that, it's natural that we're beating up on these sides and should be so much better than them. But I sort of push back on that a little bit, because you just have to remember going into this season that we were sort of saying, look, mid-table, upper half table would be a good finish for us. Our spirits were completely broken from that championship season. We had no idea what the squad was going to be like. You look at a Sunderland, you look at Ipswich, you look at Leeds for a number of years, you look at Blackburn, all these sides, Wolves, all these sides that spent multiple seasons in League One before bouncing back. It's not an easy division to get out of. And yes, we're making light work of it, but that's not to underplay the achievement of what we've done. And I think, comparative to, we've got to compare our performances against the other leagues to show that Norwich in the championship, for instance, are comparable in a number of the stats, but we're better than them in a few of the stats. And they're similarly walking the championship. City having a very strong season in the Premier League as well. These are clubs that we can compare to in terms of where we're relatively doing as well or better than them in a number of facets in our division.
Yeah, and certainly. And I guess you've just got to look at the teams that we've lost to in this division to kind of drive that point home. We haven't always had huge issues coming up against the league leaders or our fellow top table company. But the teams down the bottom, we've lost to Swindon, we've lost to relegation threatened teams, and that's kind of been the downfall. I mean, if we were to take those victories away or those losses away, we walked this league in, and I think it probably speaks to the integrity of the competition. And you look at a team like Blackpool at the moment who are flying. I mean, that again is a team with a similar story from us in recent years, and only now are they really starting to find their feet in this league as well. So yeah, I think that one thing we have learned about this season, regardless of what happens, is the integrity of League One is as strong and as difficult as perhaps some of the other tiers in English football, and that's a credit to the league.
Definitely. Well, let's talk about the game itself. 3 goals, all brilliantly taken, really. I mean, the Lewis Potter opener, 10th minute or something like that, very early in the game, really sort of showed our intent from the start. We had a number of chances early on as well. And then 2 goals in the second half from Magennis and Doherty. Doherty's goal in particular, I mean, he basically picked the ball up on our right flank, drove towards goal, passed it off to, I think it was Honeyman, and then Lewis Potter, and then got the ball back and slotted it in. He's having a fantastic second half of the season, and actually, to be fair, a fantastic season in general. I know we sort of repeated ourselves a lot in that first half of the season to sort of say he was taking a lot of shots, having a lot of chances, and once the goal came, it would sort of open the floodgates and he'd get a lot more, and that's certainly been the case. And he had a terrific game.
Yeah, he certainly did. And that midfield has been, I guess it's debatable because we've talked about our attack force, so much this season, and we've talked about our front three and I guess the goal return that all of them have had and how crucial that's been. But I still believe that the strength of City this season has been the midfield. If you look at Honeyman and if you look at Doherty, as you mentioned, even a player like Regan Slater, who's found his way into the picture more recently. It's been so reliable, and whilst not a perfect midfield, it has been one that has been a real working class delight to see, and it's provided those opportunities for our wing backs to get forward. And you're kind of concerned about how much of a threat we are. We can hurt teams from nearly everywhere now, and that's something that we're not used to saying as City fans.
Yeah, definitely. And Lewis Potter continuing on his great form with a goal and an assist. He's finishing the season really strongly. I mean, interestingly, a player that we haven't talked about as much lately, I mean, he did score the goal against Crewe in Wilkes. I mean, he's had a couple of quieter games lately, but as you say, it's a testament to the team that we're still a dangerous force from anywhere on the pitch, and that if a guy is going through a lull in form, we do have the other players who are going to pick up the slack and get the goals for the team.
Well, and I think it was earlier in the week as well, there was the announcement of George Honeyman getting the League One player's player. And I guess that, we've been big fans of Honeyman on the podcast and sung his praises this season. But again, before that, we weren't exactly what you would call the most enthusiastic Honeyman believers. So it really has been a season of sorts with, the individual performance. And like you said, you can kind of you can look around the pitch and there's players like Wilkes who have got, massive goal returns. Doherty, as you mentioned, that's played his way in, and Honeyman, who seems to be in the 3-2-1s every week. It's been a lot to celebrate, and I guess we're really grateful. And when you break it down like that, it's not hard to see why we find ourselves, leading the league with 5 fixtures remaining.
And an interesting figure who was present at the game was Richie Smallwood, who I believe was sort of involved in doing sort of exercises and warm-ups and things like that, and sort of just being around the squad again. And there's a suggestion that he could be in the squad potentially, or just around the team for the Fleetwood or Sunderland games. You sort of talked about there the fact that central three are so strong, and Slater's come into his own. We've got Alfie Jones in defence, who'd also push back into there if Burke was available. Smallwood's an interesting one. Where do you see Smallwood fitting back into the squad, both at the end of this season and then looking ahead to next season, presumably in the championship?
Look, I have grave fears for Richie Smallwood, and that's not a discredit to him at all, because I thought that he still had a significant role earlier in the season, and he's walked into the side and was given the club captain role, and he's been a huge performer, but I just think it's really hard to find a way back in at this point in time with the way that the other midfielders are playing. And if he is to play any role, I think it will be from the bench, and it will probably be in any of the kind of later-ish performances, like coming on maybe the 70th minute or so when or if games are sewn up. And otherwise I think it would be really interesting to see him feature again between now and the end of the season. So it's moving beyond that is to the second part of your question. I really don't know. I'd be surprised to see if we would continue, a contract with him if we did move up to the championship. But it's not looking great for Richie Smallwood at this point in time. But anything can happen. The injuries. It's great to have him back fit and knowing that he's at that point in his return. We do look forward to seeing him if that time comes, but on form alone, he's going to find it very tough to get back into that squad.
Yeah, I mean, look, he reminds me a little bit of Jack Hobbs as sort of a flashback to Jack Hobbs' time at City in that promotion season under Bruce, where he was a real fan favourite and a sort of mainstay of that centre-back spot. And it felt at the time a really harsh decision to move him on. And of course, we brought in Curtis Davies in his place, and sort of the rest is history. But it feels that way somewhat with Smallwood, where he seems, and you even look at his time at Blackburn, and he was a real force for them in their League One promotion campaign, and then didn't really feature in Championship. I believe probably partly to do with injuries as well as form. But he seems that sort of upper half of League One, club captain, backbone of the side sort of player, which is great, and that's definitely what you need. It's a question of if he's willing to just accept a role as a squad player for us next season and to be that presence and that older head, because to be frank, our squad is quite young, and I was actually really positive about that signing of Smallwood, regardless of any sort of perspective on performances or quality. It's just having that older player in the squad is a really interesting option to have. I tweeted something out the other day as well about, we're sort of looking ahead a little bit here to what ifs, but James Chester, we're talking about fan favourite centre-backs, you needing an experienced head in the squad, out of contract in the summer with Stoke. There's options there that, if we were to move Smallwood on, whether we do try to bring in someone else who's sort of that experienced head who can galvanise that younger squad. And I think that's what was really lacking last season when we went down, was that there was no real experienced head in the squad to sort of calm the nerves and regather the players and sort of reset the emotions.
Yeah, and as we talked about briefly last week too, with Callum Elder and his response to how he feels the dressing room is at the moment, and he believes that it's the most galvanised that he's experienced it in his time at City. And I think that players like Smallwood are exactly the reason that we're able to talk about it in that manner, and to see the joy and confidence that the players are playing with. I think a lot has to be said for players like Honeyman and Smallwood, who I assume, being the veterans of the team, have been able to bring back that feel in the dressing room and the leadership on the pitch. So, yeah, I agree. I think having him there is great for just the peripheral things that do happen in the squad. And I'm sure he's a colossus at training and whatever else. But yeah, I agree. That was the right signing at the time. Whether he is, the part of the plans moving forward, that will depend on a lot of other variables. What kind of, if we do you go up to the championship, what kind of intent will be shown from the owners? Who will the owners be? So many things like that would be really hard to comment on at this point in time. At the moment, as cliche as it sounds, we just have to worry about these next 5 games, and then I suspect that the contract issues with a Richie Smallwood or player of the like will sort themselves out.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, and it should be said as well, Magennis is another one of those experienced players in the squad. So it is good to have a couple of those around as well. So my MVP votes for this game, sort of already talked about him a bit, is the 3 votes going to Doherty for his performance. I thought he was fantastic running that midfield. And alongside him, partner in crime. And as you say, in the 3-2-1s just about every week, I've gone 2 for Honeyman. Another fantastic performance from him. Just gets it done every single game. He's Mr. Reliable on our side. And then the 1 vote for KLP just for his goal and assist. Real strong attacking force, attacking presence all through the game, and really kept the opposition on their toes. So seemed a pretty straightforward 3-2-1 for me.
Yeah, I can't really argue with any of that. I would have to agree with Doherty for 3 and Honeyman for 2. I mean, KLP was good without being amazing. I thought that there's probably another case for Louis Coyle, who could have snuck in and got that 1 point. But overall, I'm pretty happy with that, and I thought that it was a very encouraging performance. As we mentioned before the trip to Plymouth, it was going to be a tough game, given their record on their home patch, but we were more than equal to the task, and it was a great result.
Absolutely. Well, I'll bring up now the table as it stands and opposition watch as we've sort of started to do each episode. And look, it was a significant set of results on the weekend as well, with Sunderland dropping the game against Charlton, going down 2-1 in that one. Peterborough did get the win against who were they playing? They were playing Swindon, so they did pick up the win in that one. But overall, look, at the moment, I think the focus is just on Sunderland and getting enough of a break between them and ourselves. And I think probably the most significant was that loss to Wigan yesterday morning. I think that was the one that, you could kind of understand the loss to Charlton, decent side pushing for the top 6, but that loss to Wigan really sort of starts to set the nerves in for the Sunderland faithful. And one of our own, Will Keane, getting the equaliser in that game as well. So a terrific effort from him. But table's really starting to open up a bit. So what are you making of it?
Yeah, I actually was lucky enough to be on holidays at the moment, and I got up for the 3 a.m. kickoff with the Sunderland Wigan game, and it was a very interesting game to watch. I think that Sunderland started strongly, but then they really looked to fade and be out of ideas. And I tell you what, it wasn't a great Wigan side. I guess with respect to Wigan, they are fighting for their season and their life in League One, so to speak. But Sunderland really, to me, looked very tired and off the pace, particularly as the game grew on. And I guess that we've talked about it, playing those games thick and fast. I think that it's really helped City, the fact that we've been able to get a little bit fresh in the legs, so to speak, the last few weeks. But those games in hand have really caused Sunderland some issues. And I know that we've talked about League One being a tough league, and it doesn't really matter who you're playing. It's a challenge each week. But you would have to think that with the 2 back-to-back losses for Sunderland, it's going to take a lot for them with their run home to rally and beat Blackpool of nonetheless, who they play twice in the next 6 games. So they've got a lot of rebuilding if they're to close that gap between certainly Peterborough, but us as well.
Yeah, and look, we sort of talk a little bit about the players and nerves, and I think the game coming up against Fleetwood, which we may as well talk about all these games in combination, game coming up against Fleetwood, I think will be the easier of the 2 games that we've got coming up this week, because I think the game against Sunderland, the sort of implications of that game, it can go in so many different directions. I think the maths is basically that if Lincoln drops points on the weekend or on Wednesday morning, and if Blackpool and Sunderland draw, then a win against Sunderland would have us go up. And, that's a lot of ifs. But we are getting to that point of the season where securing automatic promotion is becoming really tangible and within one or two games or 2 or 3 games of results away from us. Of course, losing to Sunderland throws everything back open again. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how we attack that game or how we approach that game. And you couldn't fault the players from going out and really attacking that game because of the confidence in the squad and how we've played this season. But at the same time, if there are a few nerves that set in and that fear that, it's better to draw than to lose and how that mentality sort of starts to impact the players could be really interesting to see.
Oh, absolutely. And let's not forget that a couple of, a short week ago when we versed Crewe and in the final moments of that game before Wilkes' goal, the equation looked extremely different. I mean, in that time, we've had Sunderland have back-to-back losses. And I believe that the last time that City experienced back-to-back losses would have been in December. Considering all those variables, if again, Sunderland were to win and we lost, if this weekend, we go down to Fleetwood and then were to lose to Sunderland, then straight away, with 3 games to go, the gap is only 2 points and puts us in an incredibly precarious situation. So I think it's a case of, as you mentioned, not counting our chickens before they hatch, but really targeting that if City get 3 points against Fleetwood this weekend and Sunderland don't take all 3, I think there will be a very, very strong case to say that we're up, and it will put a huge onus on that fixture against Sunderland next week, which already is a fixture that's been circled, and we know how crucial it's going to be. But ultimately that could be the penultimate game that does secure City's return to the Championship.
Well, we've sort of penciled in the following weekend's game against Lincoln as the Cheers fixture, and of course the Fleetwood game's now been moved to 12:30 UK time, which is 9:30 our time, because of Prince Philip's funeral. So I think a few of us are going to try and get to Cheers this weekend as well. In a very selfish manner, as an Australian, it would be a little bit of an anticlimax if automatic promotion was secured against Sunderland. I think though, at least the probability is that a win against Lincoln's going to secure it at this stage, pending everything going our way. But look, as you say, it's going to be really fascinating. That I think this next 7 days, these 2 games, so much can come out of it. Either essentially having automatic promotion secured, or having the automatic race tighten right back up again, as you say. I think it's going to go either of those 2 ways, and it's going to be really. I think this is sort of the decisive week in a lot of ways for how the season's going to finish off.
Yeah, I think, as you mentioned, it is the most crucial week, I would say, in the story of the season so far. I think the twists and turns that we're likely to see in the next 7 days will be ultimately what decides the fate of this League One season.
Yeah, and I think at the same time, so Peterborough have Northampton, and as you said, Sunderland have Blackpool, and then midweek when we play Sunderland, I think Peterborough have got Gillingham. So, without writing those results in too quickly, as we say, anything can happen, but you'd sort of suspect that that's going to be at least 4 points for Peterborough out of those 2 games. So, it is going to mean that Peterborough stay quite close to us, and it's going to make it quite difficult to get a sense of how that's going to play out towards the end of the season. But I guess at the moment all focus is on 3rd, and to be honest, 4th as well. I mean, Lincoln are sort of the forgotten side there, and they've just picked up a pretty good 4-0 win, I think it was, against MK Dons. So I think mathematically they can still finish on 84 points, I think it is. So they haven't quite gone away yet. 87 points. So yeah, they haven't quite gone away yet. So still all to play for with a number of those sides, but I think a week from now we're going to have a much better picture of how it's going to finish up.
Yeah, and I guess the interesting thing is looking at Peterborough's run home as well, is they have some incredibly tricky fixtures themselves that, it's surprising just looking at the ladder to see how far down Doncaster have fallen, given the fact that they were a real threat.
I was going to say.
If you look at them on the form guide, they've lost their last 5. They still do have a game in hand, but I mean, you'd almost cross them straight out of the playoff picture, which is incredible to think of considering how much they were flying. And Peterborough play them twice. They've also got they host Lincoln. They away to Charlton. There's some really crucial games for them that will create a difficult challenge. So, yeah, I think that much like most of the City fans and yourself, is the first priority is obviously promotion, and then if a league title is something and that can be claimed, well, then by all means we'll take it, and I'm sure we'll enjoy it greatly. But at this stage, it's just about getting that second spot locked down, and then seeing what happens from there.
Absolutely. And so we've got Fleetwood first of the two, who we've already played a couple of times this season. First of all, managed by Joey Barton, and now more recently by, I had the name in my head before, but Dan Batty's obviously there, who we know quite well. Simon Grayson's the manager. Dan Batty's there now, who we know quite well. And it's a sort of a sense that I guess, Will Keane's done us a favour, Nigel Adkins done us a favour, will Dan Batty indirectly sort of do us a favour, and we can hopefully get the 3 points against Fleetwood and move on to that Sunderland game. But look, it's a pretty easy question to answer, I suspect, but no changes to the side. I mean, we're sort of flying at the moment, and you wouldn't really want to rock the boat.
No, absolutely. I think, you look at the form guide, and we are the form team, or I think equal on form for the last 5 games. So there's no reason why we need to change anything, unless there's injuries or any concerns over that. Perhaps McCann might be thinking of trying to get some minutes into Smallwood. We just don't know. I'd be a real surprise to see anything eventuate as far as changes go. But you just never know. That might be part of the tactics of changing things up a little bit. But just if we were to change too much, it would be a head scratcher, particularly if the result didn't go our way. I think that you'd have some very aggressive fans, given the formula seems to have been working incredibly successfully as of late.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I guess the only potential gamble or way that you could look at it is whether we sort of play around a bit for the Fleetwood game in order to rest players or protect players for the Sunderland game. But I think, as you say, you sort of run the risk then of if something goes wrong and trying to get too cute with the formation and the lineup. I think we've had enough sort of 7-day gaps between games of rest, so that I don't think the players would be too tired. I mean, presumably they'd be tired anyway, just because it's towards the end of the season. But comparatively speaking, I think that'd be okay. And should be all right just to run through the Fleetwood and the Sunderland games. And I think the adrenaline and the importance of that Sunderland game would get anyone up, even if they've got a couple of niggles. So, I wouldn't really think there'd be any changes for the 2 games. I think, arguably the only potential change that I could see would be Burke into the side and Jones pushed back into midfield for Slater. But I'd be quite happy just to leave things the way they are, the way that the side's playing.
Yeah, and I really do hope that in McCann's thinking that Fleetwood is the game that's targeted. I know that, as you said, the cliche is we just take one game at a time, but I really do hope City put all their eggs into the Fleetwood basket, because I do believe that 3 points there in that fixture, and then Sunderland potentially not taking all 3 points in their game is almost all but securing our fate. So I'm sure that's how we will approach the game, and I hope that is the case. But I know it's hard to kind of do things without having one eye on the Sunderland game, but ultimately, if you can target that game and get the fixture, the right result, I think we're in an incredibly strong position.
Yeah, and I was just going to check. So the Sunderland game, interestingly, so it's on at the same time. So they're both on at 9:30. So it's going to be an interesting start to the night. Peterborough actually are playing that morning at 4:45. So we'll already know their results. So any drop points in that game as well would certainly give us a boost heading into the Fleetwood game. Score prediction, just going with I'm probably just going to go with a 2-0 City win.
It sounds like a standard result, doesn't it?
Yeah.
2-0 City. I think this one's going to have a little bit more of a twist and turn in it. I feel like in the way that City have been travelling lately, it seems too smooth.
too good? Yeah, it's too good.
I'm eerily cautious. So I suspect that Fleetwood will probably score, and I think I'm more leaning towards a 2-1 and still hoping we get the result, but they're going to be a very tough fixture for us, and I really do, hope to see the right result go away, but I'm incredibly cautious.
Yeah, I mean, I probably see the Fleetwood game going our way, but I have a sick feeling in my stomach that, as you're sort of saying, the typical City will rear its head probably in that Sunderland game. It's always Sunderland. You think back to our Premier League days. It was always Sunderland who we'd be going up against. It. I think it was under Marco Silva. It was really our last chance to stay in the Premier League was against Sunderland, and got knocked off. And you just feel like a result's coming there that's going to. Promotion never seems to go smoothly for a side, and there's always one final twist in the tail. And I think a Sunderland 1-0 win against us would unfortunately sort of fit the narrative a bit in terms of drawing out the battle a few more weeks and potentially to the final day. And look, I hope it's not the case. And especially I'd hope it's not McGeady who scores a goal, because I'm sure the Sunderland fans would let us know all about it. But yeah, I think that Sunderland game's going to be really interesting fixture.
Yeah, but again, equally speaking, I look at the Sunderland run home and just count our lucky stars that we don't have to play Blackpool twice. I think that if you're a Sunderland fan and you're running your eyes across the fixtures on the back of a back-to-back loss, that would not fill you with hope, knowing that you play the league leaders away and then you have to travel to Blackpool and host them. I think that that's an incredibly difficult equation, and something that can give us some level of comfort, but as we say as City fans, I don't think that the word comfort is really in our vocabulary.
We got DJ Camel saying we're going up, lads, and look, I share the optimism. I share the belief. I do think we're going to do it. I think it would be even beyond City to mess things up that badly from here. But you never know. You can't curse it. You can't. Yes, I know. I shouldn't say that, because I'm sure those words will come back to haunt me. But look, I think with Sunderland, it's interesting. I think those Blackpool games will be really daunting for them, and I think that's the games where they're likely to slip up. But I almost wonder if the mentality of the squad would be, because there'd be so much on that City game, that if they got the 3 points against us, it's a 6-pointer. We often talk about 6-pointers for relegation battles, but it's a 6-pointer for promotion, where for them beating us means that we gain 0 points for the weekend and they gain 3, and so they're suddenly 3 points closer to us. It's a big sort of carrot for them to get a result in that game, and a big motivation for them to get a result in that game. So ironically, I could probably see them losing both games to Blackpool, still out of the running for automatic promotion, but still somehow getting the 3 points against us.
I tend to lean the other way. I actually feel a lot more confident about our fixture with Sunderland than I do with our Fleetwood game. But I don't know if that's just something that has kind of stuck with me this season, as we've seemed to drop points against the games that we technically should win. So, look, I'm hopeful of the Sunderland victory. I think the players will really relish Sunderland visiting the KCOM, and I think we'll be more than equal to that task. From what I watched with Sunderland the other day, they looked like a very tired and weary side, and obviously that'll be a fixture they will want to get up for, but I think so will we. And I'm very confident of the Sunderland game. But Saturday evening with Fleetwood, that is still an edgy one.
Going by Dan's logic, that generally speaking, sides that we beat in the first half of the season we lost to, and sides that we lost to we then beat. We did lose to Fleetwood 4-1 in the league in our first encounter with them. So who knows? That could be a good omen for us as well to get the win in that one. But, look, I think that just about rounds things up. I think it's, as we've said a few times now, I think it's going to be a massive week for City, and going a long way to deciding our fate for the season, I think, in these two fixtures.
Yeah, absolutely. Massive week of football, all to play for. It's going to be exciting. And hopefully next podcast, we're talking about the spoils of championship football again.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining me for this one, Logan. And thank you, everyone, for listening in.
No worries. Good to chat.
And hopefully, as Logan says, next time we'll be back to preview that Lincoln game, which, if not sort of celebrating the automatic promotion, would certainly be securing it. So until next time, come on, City.